Welcome to Zoe Olivia Mindset. I'm your host, Zoe, coach to the growth-minded high achiever, expert leader of full life transformations, and a voice for abundance, self-love, and mind, body, and soul alignment. This show is for out-of-the-box thinkers with big dreams, and every episode is designed to help you feel safe and free in your own skin, as well as guiding you in your healing and awakening journey. May you feel energized, expanded, safe, inspired, and free. Thank you for joining me. Let's go. Hello. Welcome back, my beautiful people, to Zoe Olivia Mindset. I am reporting live in a feeling of just tremendous peace, you guys. I really do want to start today's episode by skipping. I know we usually cover some orders of business, little programs, things I have launching, keeping you guys in check. You can always check my Instagram bio to be up to date on what I am offering. But I really do want to just dive in today. Usually I allow the podcast topics to just come to me, and they do. Every week I am flooded with requests, ideas that I come up with, inside of me, and I have a whole running list of things I want to talk about. And I want to say it was 2 or 3 days ago, I was actually talking about this with a client that I have, that I woke up and I meditated, as I usually do. I do a nice little meditation on my balcony, and it hit me. I'm like, I'm going to go into my story. Coincidentally or not so coincidentally, this is the number one most requested topic. So it's only right. Everybody wants to hear more about this, but obviously I'll always take the comments, suggestions, ideas that you guys have into account. It was never something I wasn't going to record, but before it being a suggestion, it really came from my heart that I'm like, it's really time to dive deep into my story and to share that with you guys. So I invite you in this episode. It's going to be deep. It's going to be raw. It's going to be vulnerable. If you or anyone you know is suffering, has been through any of the things that I have, I really invite you to listen to this. I really invite you to know that you are not alone and that you can get through anything. Okay. So my intention here is really to have you see that, to have you love yourself, to have you release any shame, any guilt that may have built up because of your past. Okay. So before we dive in, a couple things about this topic. The first being, you may or may not, I'm really letting it flow naturally, but you may or may not hear me use some clinical terms. I am not a licensed psychologist. I'm not very big on labels or terms. If you guys know me, you know this. Just for the sake of being concise and for really sharing this story in a language that you guys may know or understand, clinical terms may or may not slip out. And if I say them, I'll usually say this is a clinical term. So that's the first thing. And yeah, I'm about to dive in, but it's so beautiful. I'm really looking at my life right now, literally and metaphorically. Like, I'm looking at this beautiful view that I have. I'm recording a podcast telling a story about something that I used to carry so much shame about. And I'm just so at peace with this version of myself. I literally, as I'm recording this, I may or may not tear up. Let's see what happens. I have a little picture of me. I want to say I'm like 7 in this picture. I had glasses because I had an eye surgery when I was really young, and I was bullied a lot because I looked like a nerd and all that jazz, right? And I have a picture of her, and I used to also be ashamed of that version of me, right? The part of me that wasn't, normally accepted or popular or any of that good stuff. And I have this picture of her with me because I have dedicated my adult life to her, to seeing her to loving her and to showing her that she's not alone. So I think it's really cool that I have her with me right now, kind of listening to everything I'm about to say. So something that I invite you guys to do, and I'm just really feeling at peace here. So let's go ahead and dive into this episode. So about 9 years ago, give or take, I was at my peak Zoe 1.0. I was at my peak disorder. I was, how's this going to come out? This should be interesting. I was a person who was never sober. I was drinking. That's pretty much all I knew how to do. I've always been very intellectual and academic, and I could, function at a very high level and hold, those kind of intellectual conversations. But inside, I was a friggin' train wreck. So I was in my free time, I was drinking, I was smoking, I was overeating. Any kind of negative emotion I had, I'm like, okay, we're gonna drink it away, we're gonna smoke it away, we're gonna overeat it away. I was spending money like you don't even like, woo, spending. That was my thing. I was partying, pretty much anything other than living a healthy life. Essentially, I didn't realize this at the time. Obviously, I was just like existing. But looking back, I can say I was in a total and complete rebellion of growing up, a total and complete rebellion of responsibilities. I was very reckless. I was very impulsive. I mentioned the substances, like it got so bad. I was really rotating uppers and downers, anything to not feel sober. But like if I was awake, which I hated being awake because it didn't feel good. If I didn't feel good, I would take something. And maybe it was wine, maybe it was like my favorite food that wasn't super healthy, anything to give me like a hit of feeling better until it was quote unquote socially acceptable to go to sleep, which many times it wasn't. I would just go to sleep in the middle of the day and I would like take a Xanax or drink a NyQuil. Dead serious. Like this is how I was existing for years. I was deeply in the victim mindset, which I didn't know was a thing at the time, but how it showed up in my reality, I was constantly blaming others. I was super angry at everyone around me, friends, relationships. This person, I was always talking about this person did this to me and that person did that to me. I was like just such a passenger seat victim. I was on a ton of medications. That was the thing. I had been in therapy for a while, and I was on like psychiatric medications. And yeah, like I had already mentioned, anything that felt off in my body emotionally, I would just like pop a pill or drink something or eat something or spend some money. I had a really unique and not aligned definition for what it meant to feel good. And it was based in these kind of momentary dopamine hits, if you will. Okay. So after a while, as we can probably guess, this way of living is not only is it completely dangerous, but it's not sustainable. So it led to what is clinically called a mental break. So I had what's referred to clinically as a mental break. I experienced a what's clinically called a break from reality or a psychosis. I did not know who I was at the time. I thought the government was going to kill me. I had all of these little swirling beliefs that were based in fear that felt like reality. And so what happened? I entered a psychiatric care facility, and this is where I shut down completely. And when I say shut down, I mean emotionally. And I ended up coming home and staying with my family. So, based on that experience, based on the things that I saw, the way that I felt, the way that I really was existing or not existing in that space at that time, again, I didn't realize this consciously. Like, this is me having done an immense amount of healing work, and I'm going to get into that. But what I can see now was that created in me, that entire situation created such an immense, enormous amount of shame inside of me. Enormous amount of shame, enormous amount of guilt, enormous amount of trauma, of anger at myself, of sadness towards myself, feeling so angry how somebody who was otherwise perfect could put herself in a situation like that. I felt like a giant failure. So after leaving the facility and coming back home, right, there was a period where, as a result of this shame and this guilt and this trauma, I became deeply, deeply introverted. Okay. I could not leave the house. I was what was clinically diagnosed. I was clinically diagnosed with PTSD. And I'm not much for labels, but I can describe to you guys what I was seeing, feeling, all of that jazz at the time. So, what that looked like for me is that I was safe, right? I was in a safe place, roof over my head with people who cared about me, but I felt like I was in extreme danger at like 24/7, nonstop. When I had my eyes open and I was conscious and I was awake, I literally did not know if I was in a dream, in a flashback, or in reality for months. I didn't know. I was terrified. Like my whole nervous system, it felt like it was like stuck, in the cartoons where they have like the on and off. It was just like stuck on on. I could not be calm. It was the most terrifying experience of not knowing, feeling like my mind and my body was against me. Every waking moment was literally a nightmare. Okay. I remember that I would cry and scream out of emotional pain and fear because I just didn't understand what was going on. I was so scared. It was horrible. I couldn't, like, God, even thinking back to that time, like, there were days that I felt like I couldn't breathe. Obviously, I was breathing. I felt like I wasn't breathing. I felt like I was dying some of the times. I couldn't see straight most of the time. Again, I didn't know when I was looking at something. I had such a deep distrust for it. I'm like, is this really the sink, or is it this, that, or the other? It was so, so, so scary. I couldn't eat. Tremendous amount of fear, like in my mind and in my body. Um, After a bit, I started PTSD therapy. And I remember my introversion, which isn't, that doesn't even encompass it. Like it was really just such a tremendous, visceral mind body fear that I was experiencing. But I obviously went into therapy where I had to, like, the therapist was about 45 minutes from my house. So I had a family member drive me. And I remember the assignments. This is how bad it was, literally. From one week to the next, he was like, okay, when I see you from today till a week from now, all you have to do is leave the closet. Because I was living, like I said, I'm in a safe house, pretty nice apartment, like nothing going wrong. I was in like I could not leave the floor of the closet. Like that was the only place that I felt safe. So my therapist was like, okay, from today till next week, you leave the closet and you go into the bedroom. Like that's all I had to do for that one week. And then the next week, okay, you have to go out in the living room. And then the next week, we lived in a building. Okay, so the next week, you go out into the kitchen. The next week, you go into the hallway. The next week, you press the elevator button, but you don't go down the elevator. The next week, you go down the elevator. The next week, you walk 10 steps. That's how I had to learn how to be a person again. Like, it was, like, I don't even have the word to fill in the blank for that, as you can imagine. This is not the situation that our society has a bunch of vocabulary for. So there are times that you're going to hear me like kind of getting stuck for words because sometimes I even still to this day, the words fail to describe what it was really like. I had something which is clinically called dissociation, right? Where you either leave your body or you feel like you're not in your actual body, where, for example, after this PTSD therapy, which I was in for years, and I don't want to speed past the process of me like leaving the closet and being a human again. That took months. That took months before I could walk down a very, very safe block. It wasn't like there was somebody who was going to kill me around the corner. Like it's a very safe block. I was just so, so, so scared. But there was a time that listen, I didn't want to speed past that, but let's say, okay, Zoe lives by herself now. I finally got to the point where I lived by myself, but I wasn't thriving. Like I had my car, I had certain possessions around me. I had gotten myself out of like depending on others to like eat and take care of myself. So I was living by myself, but I wasn't thriving. And I was still so haunted by the flashbacks of what had happened, the guilt, the shame, feeling like such a freaking like black sheep, outcast, monster, having to deal with that, and then having to deal with how to integrate myself back into normal society. My friends are like, "Where had you been? Where have you been?" It was a whole big situation. And I remember once I had started to integrate, I was driving myself to this therapy. Like in the beginning, my parents were driving me, and then finally, like I was back in the car driving myself. If I ever like got too stressed about something, it would launch me into a flashback that would get so bad that I would literally get lost. Going to a place that I had been every week for like, call it like 8 months. I don't remember exactly the timeline of how many months was it, but that's how stressed I would get, that when my body felt unsafe or scared, it would shut down and I would get lost in a very familiar place. I'd be like, I don't know where I am. I don't know. Like I would lose any kind of sense of normalcy in my body. It was so terrifying. There were times that I would call my therapist and sob, scream into the phone, like begging him to tell me that I was going to be okay. Because I'm like, I don't know where I am. I don't know what this, I couldn't see. Like it was such a blackness, even though rationally, logically, I'm in a very safe area and I know where I'm going. In my reality, that wasn't what was going on. It was terrifying. So, yeah. So I started getting back into normal life. I remember going to several like therapists or psychiatrists and hearing labels just getting thrown around, right? Oh, like because obviously this had happened to me and I was seeking a support system to help me get through it, right? So labels were being thrown at me: depression, anxiety, PTSD, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder. Like these labels were just coming at me. It wasn't to say that I had it. Like nobody ever got to the point where they're like, you're a schizophrenic or anything like this. But those words were coming up. And I skipped a part of the story that actually is a beautiful place to put it right now. My degree in college before this all happened was in psychology, where I learned about schizophrenia. I learned about borderline personality disorder and bipolar and all that jazz. And now I'm sitting in a room where someone's like, oh, that could be you. That for me was really the sobering moment. That was it. I literally just decided this is not going to be my life. I'm done. It very much came like that. Me versus me. I don't think there was even anyone there in the room. I think it was me in the mirror, just looking at myself and saying, I am done being the fucking victim. I'm done. This is not going to be my future. I'm done. I'm done. I'm giving up blame. I'm giving up literally anything I have to give up. This is not going to be my identity. I'm not carrying this with me. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. I literally said to myself, I have to face my fear of growing up because that's what it was. I didn't want to grow up. I was rebelling. I was doing everything I could to not grow up. You know, I really took the time. I started working again. I enjoyed what I did. Like I mentioned in other episodes, I've always been the high achiever and the high fun. It's not hard for me to get into a job and like become very top of whatever it is that I'm doing. So again, after all this happened, that's essentially what I did. Again, that's what I did. But very quickly, I realized, just like I had realized with everything else that was going on, this isn't me either. Like I had just lived through something that was such a shock to my mind, my body, my whole nervous system. My whole system was just so jarred. I have just decided I'm not going to settle for living what's considered to be a normal life. I'm not saying that that doesn't work for some people and all that. Like, there's no shame in that. But for me, I'm like, I'm not here to be in this set of rules. I'm not here to have a 9 to 5. I'm not here to be in this job, even if it's in an industry that I love, to have, you know, this perk and this boss and this. It didn't feel like me. And I didn't really know what I was doing when I decided I was done. Like I literally was like, I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out. And that's what I did. I actually threw myself into exercise. I've always been a big exercise person, but I started to really study it. And I became a personal trainer with no other intention other than just, I fucking love this. Why not? I ended up being a really good personal trainer, like helped some people, started playing with the idea of being a business person. And all it was the decision for me to stop looking outside of myself. That's all it was. All of this was just that. It was have the courage to listen to who you really are, Zoe, not who other people want you to be. Be who you are. Like it would come to me in dreams. It was like a voice screaming with all the love in the world. Just listen to me. Just be who you are. I wrote down all my joys, all my passions. Exercise, perfect. I decided from that moment, I'm not going to be exchanging my time for literally anything other than the things that bring me joy. I'm just not. That was it. I'm like, I don't care who this offends. I don't like, I was just done. Like my nervous system told me like we've had enough listening to the outside. Now it's time to listen within. And I can tell you guys, you probably hear it in my voice. I have never made such an amazing decision ever. My life has not fallen together for the best as it has since I've made that decision. My life has not wavered. Yes, there are times when I have a doubt or something, but I feel like I'm me. So essentially, I say all of this to say I would not take 1 second, 1 millisecond of any of that back, any of the suffering, any of the trauma, any of the flashbacks, any of it, because it was all necessary for putting me where I'm at right now, which is in so much peace. I had the courage to invest, literally invest, obviously, like my time and energy, but invest a sizable amount of money in people, in programs designed to help me heal what I had going on, designed to help me face my fear of growing up. And now not only do I believe that like I've grown up, but like I've grown up into me. Like the irony, I'm here staring at my inner child and I'm just her in an adult body. And I love my life and I feel so liberated and calm and free and I can make money being myself. Like I did that. And I don't think I would have. Not even I don't think. I know I would not have unless I had been through all of that stuff. There's not one part of me that carries shame, that carries guilt, that carries sadness. At the time, of course, there was, but that was still the part of me that wanted to impress you, that wanted to please you, that was scared that you would abandon me. You know, stepping into me now is like, no, it's not about that. That's living externally. Living internally is here's the truth, here's my past, and I really hope this makes you feel less alone because this happens to a lot of people and nobody talks about it. The shame, the guilt eats you alive. And that's like not even taking into account the other symptoms. Like imagine the flashbacks. Imagine not knowing if the couch you're sitting on is like in a dream and then imagine having a degree in psychology and being like, am I schizophrenic? Am I going to do this? Is this like, imagine going from there to here. And I want you, as you're listening to me, if you're feeling any type of ways of Zoe 1.0, or you know someone who is, to understand that this isn't and doesn't have to be your future. There's nothing chronic about this. You can heal yourself. You can heal your mind. You can heal your body. You just have to believe that it's possible. And the first person that comes to mind to thank is that trauma therapist that I had. He, bless his soul, the amount of times he had to listen to me sobbing. I'm like, are you sure that I'm not crazy? I was like so terrified. I'm like, oh my God, you got to just like lock me up forever. And he would very calmly be like, I really don't see anything to suggest that you you're crazy. I can't tell you in confidence that you're crazy. He didn't let me label myself. And if he heard me, I would say like, yeah, thanks, doc. And he'd be like, that wasn't me. That was you. And so if you hear me in any kind of teaching capacity, or you're a client, or you've taken a class of mine, you know I say the same thing, and that's because of him. Because it's not us as the teachers, the facilitators, the leaders. We're just mirrors of you. You have all the tools that you need. So shout out to my doc, even though he'll never let me give him the credit. He really did help me save my own life. And then shout out to me as well. I'm looking at the baby version of myself, the girl who was so scared, who was so sad, who didn't know how to open up, and who chose drinking and partying because she didn't know how to process her emotions. You know, as soon as she had some money, she would spend it because that's what she thought was necessary to feel good. And I love her for that. She was doing the best that she could. And now everything I do is for her, to show her we can build a life that's sustainable. Not only can we, we have, and we always will. And we'll show other people how to do the same thing. And like, it's really cute to see her smiling back at me right now. So this has been a very interesting one, my friends. I recorded this with no other intention than to just share openly my experience, with the hope, with the intention that if you or anyone else is feeling off, to have you see that you're not alone. You can get through this. You're okay. Make sure you really look into support systems who will lift you up, who will help you come back to you. Because at the end of the day, that's what you're here to be. If you're listening to this, if you're on this planet right now, you have a unique role to play here, and you matter. And you don't matter because you're achieving things. You don't matter because people like you, or because you have a cool clothes, or you go on nice vacations. That's not why you matter. You matter because you're here, and that's it. So please hear these words, pass these words along. Know that I love you. I'm so grateful for you to be listening to this. And yeah, it's pretty much all I got for you guys today. Please, 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 if you love this episode, if you're listening to this now, post a screenshot, tag me, send it to a friend, write a review. So grateful as always to you guys, and I'm here for you. Sending you so much love.